All right, we're continuing with the question of how to disciple, how a missionary does discipleship. Yesterday we had a bit of an informal discussion on some of your ideas as to what you think are keys to leading a person from A to Z to where they presumably would be able to do the same thing with another person. And that includes having a sense of importance about learning, being motivated, having goals. You need to take a person through so they at least have a knowledge of the Bible, generally, which would include an awareness of Bible study methods, the ability to answer questions for themselves, and the knowledge of key doctrines and issues. And sooner or later, in a disciple's experience, his mentor should probably, and it may have to happen many times, should evaluate his own personal situation, give him correction and guidance if necessary about what where he needs to shape up. This is very personal and practical in areas such as purity, or perhaps the need to change jobs or relationships, and the need for his own personal dependence on the Spirit, specific pitfalls that he's likely, because of his circumstances, to fall into. And then, last but not least, and surely this would be involved throughout a discipling program, a disciple would need to be placed into positions of active responsibility, both in witnessing to the world and in ministering to the saints, because that's the twofold sphere, is it not, of Christian service when you are mature. So all of these things are necessary in the discipleship program. Now, we were focusing at this juncture on perhaps that one division within the discipleship program having to do with the knowledge of the Bible. And we were focusing on what kind of a curriculum you could take a person through, what would be involved in the training process. And I gave you an example of the First Principles of the Faith course, which is about a 12-week program where you could take a person through and introduce them to major doctrines and major issues of practical importance. All right? Also, in the course of that, you would expose them to errors at the appropriate time, forewarn them, introduce them to some major scriptures, and show them where they could read further. Now, I'd like to briefly discuss with you this morning the college curriculum that we are following here. Let's analyze it in terms of a discipleship program. This may help you see why you take some of your courses, by the way. As the college curriculum is laid out in the catalog, it moves from year 1 through 4, although we rarely ever actually follow that procedure. Now, that may be one of the reasons why some of our students have more difficulty than others. Right? You guys are coming in on level 1 at the appropriate time because we started over this year. Okay? And we don't have a mixture of first and third or fourth year students. So everybody's first year and everybody starts on level 1. So that's an ideal situation for you. If you'll notice, the college curriculum is laid out. It basically has 4. Actually, no, it has 5 parts to it. There's Bible, there's doctrine, Christian education, languages, and history. Languages and history. Bible, that is actual study in the Bible, and then secondly, doctrine, which is related Bible study, and then Christian education courses, how to implement, how to do what you're taught, and language and history. And those are the 5 areas in which you get training here. Now, in the first year, you study in the Bible, Genesis to You're supposed to study Genesis to Song of Solomon. And the reason you guys are out on that is because Ken took synthesis last year. Right? So that's why we moved on to the next one for his sake. Right? So first year you take Genesis to Song of Solomon, and then you focus in on the books of Isaiah and Genesis. In the second year in the Bible, you go Isaiah to Acts, which we are in now. Right? And you focus in on the books of Daniel and Matthew. Second year, you take an exegesis course. So this is, for the first time you're introduced to, this is a key thing, because we discuss Bible study methods. It's in exegesis that you learn how to study your Bible. You don't learn that in synthesis or exposition. And exegesis is one of my favorite courses, because I got so much out of that. The principles that I learned when I first taught it, I still use when I prepare studies. So you can see that what we're doing is developing you. We're proceeding to give you a survey. So year 1 you go through Song of Solomon, year 2 you go through Acts, year 3 you finish off, you go through Revelation. And you don't have Bible survey the last year. Right? However, in addition to the survey, we give you Genesis and Isaiah, Daniel and Matthew, Acts and Revelation as 6 key books in the Bible that you need to have a special grasp of. In addition to those, we stress 3 times in the course, second, third, and fourth year, they stress exegesis courses. And all of those exegesis courses will simply reinforce the Bible study method for you. And those 3 books are John, Hebrews, and Romans. They're probably 3 of the crucial books in the Bible. John for belief, Romans for the plan of salvation, and Hebrews for the difference between Old and New Testament. Right? Those 3 books are... Like if I was going to have a Bible study with a new Christian, and if I had to pick one of 3 books, it would be one of those books. In a discipleship program, you can't beat John for stressing the absolute necessity. Like if you were having a mixed Bible study in a place like Manitowoc or something, where you were definitely going to get unsaved people into it, as well as maybe have a few young Christians. All right? Go through John. Because John is there to teach you about belief. And it'll hit it every time you have a Bible study. Every episode in the book is there, having something to do with belief versus disbelief. Okay? If you have all new believers, all right, and you really want to get them grounded, generally, take them through Romans. Romans is Paul's magnum opus. It's his major writing. It takes you from the need for salvation right through how it was provided and how you live as a Christian. It covers all the bases. Right? All the bases of the Christian life. It's the most well-rounded book that you do. And the book of Hebrews, of course, would be an excellent one for people specifically who are Catholics, strong Catholics, if you have Bible studies with them, or people who have come out of cults, with a real legalistic emphasis, or people that just don't know anything about the Old Testament, So, or a Jewish Bible study, right? If you were working with Jews, Hebrews is the place to start, okay? Because it shows that Christ is better than everything in Judaism. Right? The prophets, the angels, Moses, Joshua, Aaron, everything. Christ is better than everything back there. All right? So, getting back to our subject. In our discipleship program here, you're getting a full diet of the Bible, 9 key books in the Scriptures, and in the first few years, you're going to be, every year you get doctrine. The first year you start in the doctrine of the Bible, God and angels. Next year you'll move to man, sin, and Christ, and they're closely related. The doctrine of man and sin is especially related to Christology. And then the third year you get the doctrine of salvation and the church and prophecy. And I think it's good to get to wait until you're a little more firmly grounded until you get to the doctrine of salvation and church, and for that matter prophecy, because they're all very involved doctrines. They all have great dispensational distinctives. They run from Old to New Testament, with the exception of the doctrine of the church. And so you need to have a certain amount of background for that. Your fourth year, you take premillennialism, which is probably one of the most involved courses in doctrine. Okay, so you cover your major doctrines. And then as far as Christian ed goes, you have Christian education every year when you come to college. The first year you get hit with it, and the last year you get hit with it pretty heavy. For instance, you have 4 courses in Christian ed this year. Right? Missions is a Christian ed course. It's how to. What's the big picture? Right? Child evangelism and personal evangelism are both Christian ed. How to work with kids. You aren't getting personal evangelism, right? Okay. And then every year you come here, you are involved in Sunday school administration. And that one course there, because it's hit 4 times, will make it second nature for you. You'll be glad you'll have it. I don't know how many people have written back and said, to my mom, boy, am I ever glad I did that, because when you get lumped off in a small church somewhere and you're the only person that's going to be interested in doing it, you're going to be glad you know how.
And not just say one that they spend a lead time or one like that studying.
Yeah.
It's one that you
That's right. Right. So Christian ed, Sunday school, missions, personal evangelism, child evangelism. In your second year, your Christian ed is basically Sunday school. Third year, Christian ed is Sunday school. And last year, your Christian ed includes homiletics, how to preach. Right? Now that's a major one for men. Pastoral theology, again, that one's invaluable for both men and women from different perspectives. Men are going to be the pastors and the women are going to be the pastors' wives, or sometimes women can get into ministries in which they are basically pastors without the name. Right? Sure. So, how to do pastoral work, that's last year. Pedagogy, the science of teaching children, or the science of teaching. Right? It's a complementary one to child evangelism and Sunday school. Okay? It's the official how to teach kids course. All right, so Christian education courses, those are in there. They're spread out, and I think looking back at this, I think it's well done. I think that you need to wait until your 4th year for something like homiletics. You need to have something consistent every year. How to? You need to keep a disciple involved, right? Working. The first year, it's good to get the overall picture, to see what all is out there, including missions and personal work and children's work at home and stuff in the church. Now, languages and history are the last 2 areas, and you're not introduced to languages until the 2nd year. And I think that's a good, you're not supposed to be anyway.
No,
But languages are so helpful for a person who does their own, like who gets into a ministry where you do your own original Bible study all the time, whether it's preparing lessons for Sunday school or preaching in pastoral work. Languages are so helpful to you as a tool that we put a real emphasis on them. And you can't get them in 1 year. You have to spend 3 years on them. Okay? Well, one of the reasons it's so hard is because of the cultural context in which we find ourselves. Like, Westerners are, I read this somewhere lately, and it's amazing. We are just about illiterate in this country. No, we are just about illiterate compared to literacy in other parts of the world.
That means nothing for us.
Yeah.
You get a European, you have 5 that language.
Sure.
Not necessarily. It's just
Sure. They live in an environment where language is very obviously important. To us, we live in a very unified culture, basically English. So we don't see the practical value of it. Yeah. So, anyways, language is a real key, but it's only a key for people who are going to actually be students of the Word. So, it's reserved for those that are going to follow through on it. History. A couple times in the course, you're given history courses to fill out a couple of important gaps. You need to understand Bible history. That's what Bible Lands and Customs is. And you need to understand church history. And that's what church history survey is in the second year. And if you want to learn more about that, then you pick it up in university or something like that. Right? But we just introduce you to them. Okay? No, one is second year and one is fourth year. But it wouldn't matter really where you put them in because they're the kind of courses that would be valuable at any time. Right? So the college curriculum is basically a discipleship program spread over 4 years. I think it's intense and it's detailed and it's adequate. It's good. You need that. Perhaps, I don't know, there is another division of study that we have listed in the college catalog that we don't do much. We haven't done for a few years, and it's the area of Christian evidence. And I think that it's a shame that we aren't doing it because the Christian evidence courses like OTI, Old Testament Introduction, New Testament Introduction, comparative religion, stuff like that is there as a defensive, argumentative, apologetic type courses where you answer the critics' objections. And that is a weakness that we need to address. But then when you get out, supposedly you'll have the tools to be able to develop that stuff on your own, read and understand it, and formulate answers and things. Anyway, if you're trained properly, right, and adequately. All right, so there's an example of a 4-year program. Now, what would you do if you only had a year to work with a person? Sure, you could drop out a lot of that stuff. You could perhaps get a person to memorize the Old Testament survey to get a grasp of the Old Testament, right? That thing that you learned in synthesis. And then learn a New Testament historical outline. How Acts fits in with the epistles. Yeah, I would suggest that if you were going to, I'm just thinking out loud here, that if you were going to do a 1-year study with somebody, right, you've got time in 52 weeks, cut out Christmas and Easter, so you've got about 50 lessons, right? You've got 50 studies to do with a person if you go once a week, and in that time you want to give them a general survey of the Bible, and you want to introduce them to Bible study methods, and you want to cover the major doctrines, and what else? general survey, Bible study methods, major doctrines. Maybe you could spend 3 or 4 lessons on Bible lands and customs, getting them aware of like geography of the Holy Land, a certain amount of Bible history. This would fit in with a Bible survey. And also maybe do a study on church history, like the 3 or 4 lessons, like just really quickly survey it.
Here, a lot of people think it's the one that goes a lot, they tend to come to the consider that in church history.
What we did last year, we tried to adapt it last year, and we didn't get anybody. We were well prepared last year for some people that said they were going to come for 1 year, and they didn't show up. And what we were going to do is we offered the Bible lands and customs, of course, so that they could be familiar with the geography and the basic history of the Old Testament and New Testament. So that's why we offered Bible lands and customs. And we always, just about every year we teach synthesis, and we teach theology down here. And so what we were going to do is spend the first 6 weeks of the synthesis making them learn a Bible survey. See? The first 6 weeks. And then in the first 6 weeks of theology, we were going to cover all 8 major doctrines. Learn a major reference, learn 5 major points about it, a couple of errors. We were going to survey all the major doctrines in 6 weeks. We were going to do that and then focus on the rest of the time on the specific one that the catalog said we were supposed to deal with. So we were going to adapt it, and we could easily do that if we knew someone was here only for 1 year. But none of you guys are in that. Yeah. Right. Now let me give you an example. John Lacrosse is currently working through something along this line. Okay? He just can't make it over here all the time. All right? So what he's doing is, I went over and talked to him just the other night about it. And he and I have been working together for some time in a sending discipleship program together. And I had discussed this with him before, that I think that what he needs to do is to do a basic study on every major doctrine, quick. He needs to survey every book of the Bible, quick. Just to introduce himself to it and fill in the holes. But he's come to the church. He's become a church for 8 or 9 years. Right? And you get hit and miss, right? He's taken a couple of major doctrines, he's taken homiletics, he's taken a couple of courses here and there, but he's honed in on those, and he's very weak in areas that he hasn't even touched. So, what I suggested to him was, why don't you commit yourself to covering 1 doctrine a week, one of the major doctrines a week. And what you do is you identify for yourself the major issues that are involved in the question, like, for instance, he's going to study salvation this week at home. Ask yourself, what are the real practical issues that people have to settle about that particular doctrine? Well, eternal security, baptismal regeneration, you need to be baptized to be saved, you lose your salvation. What about works in salvation? What place does works have? A true definition of faith. Maybe the Calvinistic question. Did Christ die for everybody or just for some people? Because that's the question a lot of people are concerned with. So first identify the issues, and then identify for yourself maybe 3 or 4 major passages in the Scripture having to do with that subject. Like, where would you go to talk about salvation in a general way? A major Scripture in the New Testament. What about in the Old Testament? Right? So he needs to do that. And then summarize it in 1 paragraph. 5, 6 points that would cover all the major headings in the doctrine. He can get this stuff by going to the table of contents and changing. reading a little bit here and there through the book, checking out some references, and then at the end of the week, he has to put it down on one sheet of paper. Summarize that doctrine on one sheet of paper. So if he does that every week for 8 or 9 weeks, it's going to take him 2 months to cover the major doctrines. Well, that's great. That would be really good for him. It'll round him out a little bit. And then if he was to start working his way through the books of the Bible, try to do at least 2 books a week. There's another 30 weeks. Surveying the Bible. Yeah. So anyway, what you need to see is that in a discipleship program, you have to adapt yourself and the kind of curriculum that you would work through with a person to their particular situation.
Yeah, you're going to have to give them
right. In his case, he's got some really good stuff. Yeah. So he doesn't need it. He's got Baxter for the Bible survey. You can read, on the books to get the ideas. And he's got Walden. He's got commentary on the Bible. He doesn't have a chamber, but he's got access to it. So there's another idea on adapting yourself. Let me give you one more. Oh, 2 more. Here. 3 more. 3 more discipleship formats here that I wanted to just briefly talk. Here's one by Chick. This is what Chick has developed for a new Christian. He calls it 8 basic steps toward Christian maturity. All right? Now, if you look at his contents, he covers 8 basic subjects. Number 1, the Bible. Okay. 1 and 2 are the Bible. Where did the Bible come from? And the importance of reading the Bible regularly. Right? So you might as well say he focuses on bibliology. Right? Prayer is his next one. Love. Okay, now he's talking about in relationship to other Christians in particular. All right? So he's really focusing on a person's relationship to the church here. The enemy, Satanology, Christian victory, all right, Christian warfare. Okay, pitfalls. Okay, so basic dangers. That's good. It's a really good thing. Called out. Okay, this one ties in with his love thing. It has to do with the church. And then warn them the importance of evangelism, service, witnessing. Right? Now, he's hit probably the major bases. Of course, this is only to put some seed thoughts in a person's head. And they would read through it. They would probably read through it at night. Right? But if they were going to look up references that he mentions in here, it might take them 2 or 3 weeks if they were going to keep working at it regularly. Be good.
Did you check that out?
Yeah, I read it. And
I use it with people that I use it myself sometimes. I see it one time. Very easy.
like he's King James. Like he believes that the only true Bible is King James. So that's what he doesn't go into it like he does in Sabotage, but he does mention that King James is the one that God has preserved. All right, so that's Chick's discipleship program, and I like it. I think it's a good deal. I got 3 or 4 of them for this summer. Gave one away to a kid. Okay. Now here's another one. This is a book called Building Steadfast Christians by Velma Lowry. He's a pastor in a church, and this is his. This is what he takes a person through who is a new convert. And I'll just give you this table of contents. Building Steadfast Christians is the name of the book. Delma Lowery, Lowey. Okay, so his first basic heading is what you should know about salvation. And he talks about death, different kinds of death, and deliverance from death. He talks about grace and justification. Right? Second major heading, he talks about what you should know about baptism. Now, I suppose that he goes through this point with a new convert just to help them understand their salvation, probably. Okay? Now, once they're settled on that and they've got the assurance of their salvation, then he takes them right into the first step, baptism. Discipleize all nations, baptizing them, right? So he discusses baptism. He defines it. He talks about how you baptize and why you baptize and who baptizes. You know, the meaning of it, like what's the significance. So he basically defines baptism, a little baptism course. Third, what we should know about the church. He defines the church. The importance of belonging to a church. He says you should be a member of a church, and he talks about the responsibilities in the church. So he's introduced quickly a person to why God's plan for the church is significant, what it is, and in fact you've got a job to do, and he gets them right in there right away. Okay. We'll rub this other stuff off here so I can keep going. All right, his fourth point is what you should know about Christian living. What you should know about Christian living. Bible reading, prayer, church attendance, witnessing, and giving. So, you can see that he's gotten very practical here. I'm not sure. He came by here one time, parked his van out here for holidays out in the parking lot and stayed for a week, and he gave all the college students one. So that's how I got it, because one of the guys threw it away. All right, his fifth point. What you should know about Christian living, Bible reading, prayer, church attendance, witnessing, giving. And his last subject was what you should know about prophecy. You should know that God has a plan. So he goes through all the major things: the present age, the rapture, tribulation, second coming, and the end. And he's definitely a pre-trib, pre-mill sort of guy. Present age, rapture, tribulation, second coming, and the end. He has 3 appendixes to the book, I guess maybe because they're major issues and he deals with them. A, Christ's death. He discusses that. Second appendix is assurance of salvation. And see the scriptural usage of the word church. Oh, that's a pretty good book. Discipleize all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and then teaching them. Well, that's what he's done. He's following it through. Baptism, he gets them to understand what baptism is. He gets them right into the local church. He gets them active, shows them their duty, and discusses the practical things of Christian living, basic plan and program of God, and then they're on their way. Once they got that, then you can start putting meat on the bones for them. Right? But you've got them in there and going. They've committed themselves. That's what you want, isn't it? Okay. Now we've still got 10 minutes here, 5 minutes, but we'll go until we hear the footsteps on the stairs. I want to introduce one last format to you that came to me as I was meditating in the lotus position. No.
I'm leaving.
No, actually, I was sitting at my desk and I was, I don't know exactly what I was doing, but I wasn't getting very far in what I was supposed to be doing because this came to me. I entitled it Developmental Studies for a Discipleship Program. 5 steps. Get a person to know the basics first. And in this you do a doctrinal and a practical survey. Such things as, you can't lose your salvation, you need to pray, you need to go to church, you need to witness, and practical stuff. Right? So touch the major doctrines and then a practical survey. And this first level in your discipleship program is to protect, primarily. Protect the person. And secondly, to give them a framework. Give them a framework of thinking. If you can just right off, first thing, mold their thinking so they think about the important things without leaving anything crucial out, then that's the very first thing. Second stage, get them to recognize opportunities. And in order to do this, the way you do it is to survey the doctrine of the church specifically. Focus in on the doctrine of the church, on missions, and outreach. So what you're basically trying to do at this level is to give them a burden. Now, a person that is newly saved usually has a burden, don't they? I mean, if they're genuinely saved, that's when people are usually excited about it. You know, I got saved. I want to tell people, so that you aren't going to have to work too hard. This, but you do want to make them see that if they don't have it, they should have it, right? And it should remain with them, right? Third stage, get them to know enough to lead. And the way you accomplish this is by specializing in doctrine. doctrinal study. In other words, you go back through these basic doctrines that you introduce them to, and you discuss issues. You study the cults. And what you're primarily seeking to do at this level of study is to build awareness and discernment, and you want to enable them to counter error. You want them to be able to intelligently refute error. Now, I would say that you guys are probably working at this level right now. You've already gotten the basics in church and Sunday school and young people when you first got saved. You've right off. It doesn't take a person long to realize the importance of witnessing and stuff. You all have that sense. Right now, you're building your own discernment. You're at this level where you're working on the ability to actually work with other people's problems and answer questions. Right? The fourth level is get the disciple to discern or know his situation. I wouldn't say that all of these levels are necessarily, independent. Because of course there's some overlapping. The way you get a person to know their situation is to teach them about the will of God, study God's will. Again, focus in on ecclesiology and specific analysis of their own situation. You make themselves think, get yourself down in your own shoes, get a blank sheet of paper, and ask yourself a couple of basic questions. What are my spiritual gifts? Am I prepared? Can I actually answer these questions? Am I ready to deal with issues, or am I really up in the air on stuff yet? How well am I prepared? Do I know what I want to do with my life? Am I being used now? Am I refusing to get involved in the local church, or am I already involved in the ministry? And stuff like that. Analyze your own situation and what you're aiming at here is getting them to perceive their place of serious service. Sooner or later, a person has got to get into something that they're going to be with for a while. I was going to suggest that one of the ways, besides just asking yourself questions, is you do leadership studies. This will also bring things out to leadership studies, visitation, discussion and analysis with your spiritual leaders. This is where you're sitting down with the people that have discipled you, and you're letting them pick on you. Right? And then last but not least, a disciple needs to know his methods. And the way you learn methods is by practice, primarily. A certain amount of training and practice and observation of others. In other words, what you're really aiming